It was 2004, and Amelia's life came in two colors. White during the day, beneath fluorescent office lights and endless stacks of tax forms. Blue at night, when the shriek of a dial-up modem opened a small window into another world. The Blue Room chat group wasn't just a website. It was a refuge for people who felt invisible in their real lives. Behind screen names and blinking cursors, strangers became friends, and lonely evenings became bearable. Amelia spent 12 hours a day helping other people organize their futures. The Blue Room was the only place where she could forget her own. In the pale glow of the monitor, life finally felt larger than the walls of her apartment. Among the dozens of usernames drifting through the Blue Room, one always found his way back to her. Jim, 26. Amelia didn't know what he looked like, but she knew the rhythm of his thoughts. When her days felt heavy, there would be a message waiting. When the world felt particularly cruel, there would be a poem hidden between ordinary conversations. Jim listened the way tired souls dreamed of being heard. Over time, Amelia stopped looking for his name when she logged on. She started looking for the feeling he left behind. It would be somewhere between the words and the waiting. A stranger became her favorite part of the day. Then one evening, Jim told her he would be visiting her area in 2 weeks. Amelia stared at the blinking cursor, suddenly aware of how much of her life had become tangled up in someone she had never actually met. The internet had always felt safe because it lived behind glass. Meeting in person felt different. Real. After hours of nervous discussion, they settled on a crowded amusement park filled with lights, families, and noise. A neutral place where neither of them would feel trapped. Amelia typed yes, and unknowingly stepped onto a bridge between fantasy and reality. As the meeting drew closer, Amelia found herself smiling at thoughts she couldn't control. Then, she wondered what Jim's laugh sounded like outside of typed words. The amusement park slowly transformed into something bigger than a meeting place. It became a finish line where months of conversations would finally have a face attached to them. But while Amelia dreamed beneath one blue screen, another blue screen glowed hundreds of miles away. A silver-haired man sat alone in a dark office, staring quietly at her photograph. His expression wasn't hopeful. It was apologetic. That night, Amelia logged off carrying the nervous excitement of someone standing on the edge of a new beginning. She believed she was about to meet Jim, a 26-year-old paralegal who loved poetry and late-night conversations. That was the story she carried to bed. Miles away, the truth sat beneath the same blue light. Jim wasn't 26. He wasn't a paralegal. The man studying Amelia's photograph was Arthur Bricks, a 60-year-old attorney who had spent his life hunting some of the most dangerous men in the country. He touched the edge of the screen and whispered, "I'm sorry for the lie, Amelia. I just wanted to know if someone could love me without knowing my name." Tomorrow, the Blue Room would lose its shadow. Amelia was the type of person who never arrived exactly on time. If a meeting started at noon, she arrived at 11:45. So on the morning of her meeting with Jim, she stepped through the gates of the amusement park 15 minutes early, wearing her favorite jagged jeans and a faded baseball cap. Around her, children raced toward roller coasters while families drifted through the sea of colorful attractions. Amelia tried to look relaxed, but every passing minute made her heart beat a little faster. 1.756 had been running out of the boy. It was the first man. The boy turned up in sound of the boy. It was the first fast wait and forced 747. Okay, Somewhere in the noise was the voice she had spent months imagining. Also, she was looking for a dream that had never needed a face before today. While she waited, Amelia found herself building Jim one last time in her imagination. Maybe he was carrying a backpack stuffed with books. Maybe he had nervous eyes and a crooked smile. Maybe he would wave awkwardly from across the midway and immediately make her laugh. Months of conversations had painted a picture in her mind, and every detail belonged to a man somewhere in his 20s. A man who still had more future than history. The problem with dreams is that they never ask permission before becoming expectations. A few yards away, a man stepped through the crowd and immediately drew attention without asking for it. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. The silver hair framed a face marked not by age, but by experience. 4 decades of discipline had left his body stronger than most men half his age, and the simple clothes he wore did little to hide his commanding presence. Behind him, several people wandered the park pretending to enjoy the attractions. To everyone else, they were strangers. To Arthur Bricks, they were security. Arthur spotted Amelia almost immediately. She looked exactly like her photographs: jagged jeans, baseball cap, and eyes that still carried the hopeful nervousness of someone expecting a different future. For a moment, he simply stood there watching her. The lie suddenly felt heavier than it ever had behind a computer screen. The blue room had allowed him to borrow another life. A younger life. A simpler life. But there was no screen left between them now. There was only a few yards of pavement separating a fantasy from the truth. Amelia noticed him only when his shadow fell across her path, but she looked up, expecting a young man carrying months of familiar conversations. Instead, she found herself staring at someone entirely different: Talakos, silver-haired, elegant, powerful, a man who looked less like a paralegal and more like he owned the building where paralegals worked. Arthur stopped in front of her and offered a gentle smile. "Gen 2000, he asked softly. Amelia froze. The amusement park noise seemed to vanish around them. "I'm Arthur," he said. "Or Jim." Then, seeing the surprise spread across her face, he added, "I know this is a surprise. Give me 1 hour to explain why I lied. If you still want to leave after that, I'll never talk to you again. I'll never chat with you again." The boy made of words was gone. The truth had finally arrived. Amelia almost walked away. Every instinct told her she should. The man standing before her was not the person she had spent months imagining beneath the blue glow of a computer screen. But Arthur had asked for only 1 hour, and there was something disarming about the way he offered it. No excuses. No pressure. Just honesty wrapped in quiet regret. So they walked through the amusement park together, 2 strangers carrying the same conversations but completely different expectations. The hour Arthur requested began ticking away beneath the noise of roller coasters and distant laughter. Neither of them realized that 1 hour was about to change everything. Arthur didn't hide behind another lie. He told Amelia the truth she should have received from the beginning. He was a high-profile attorney. He had spent decades prosecuting dangerous men and making enemies along the way. The younger age, the simpler job, and the carefully crafted online identity had all served the same purpose. He wanted one corner of his life untouched by power, status, and fear. Arthur admitted that Jim had been a disguise, but the conversations had been real. The poems had been real. The loneliness had been real. For the first time, Amelia began to understand that the lie wasn't built to deceive her. It was built to hide a man who no longer trusted anyone to see him clearly. The strange thing was that the age stopped mattering far sooner than Amelia expected. Arthur's silver hair carried history, but it didn't carry weakness. His mind was sharp, his humor effortless, and his presence felt larger than the crowd surrounding them. They spent the afternoon writing attractions, sharing stories, and laughing at things that probably weren't funny to anyone else. The Ferris wheel and a stand selling lemonade, Amelia stopped comparing Arthur to the man she had imagined online. The fantasy quietly stepped aside and made room for reality. To her surprise, reality was winning. By evening, the amusement park lights glowed like stars scattered across the ground. The promised hour had stretched into an entire day. Arthur and Amelia moved through the crowd with an ease that neither of them had expected. The age gap that should have stood between them felt strangely invisible. For a few precious hours, they were not a 60-year-old attorney and an overworked tax clerk. They were simply two people enjoying a day they never wanted to end. It felt less like a first meeting and more like a reunion between two souls who had forgotten they already knew each other. Amelia returned home carrying a happiness she hadn't felt in years. Arthur's laughter still echoed in her thoughts, and for the first time, the blue room felt small compared to the real man behind it. Then her phone rang. The familiar voice on the other end immediately softened her smile. It was her uncle Victor, the man who had paid for her education, helped raise her after her parents died, and loved her like a daughter. His tone was calm, warm, and completely ordinary. "Hey Amy," he said gently. "I heard from a friend that you were out with Arthur Bricks today." Amelia froze. After a brief pause, Victor continued, "I'm a little curious how you two met. I'm coming over so we can talk about your friend, Arthur. I'll be there in 30 minutes. The day ended with a question. The night arrived with a shadow. Victor arrived exactly 30 minutes later, just as he promised. He wasn't alone. Several well-dressed men accompanied him, lingering quietly near the apartment entrance like distant relatives attending an uncomfortable family gathering. Yet Victor himself looked exactly as he always had. Warm, calm, familiar. He stepped inside, carrying the same gentle smile that had guided Amelia through most of her life. He didn't interrogate her. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he sat across from her and spoke as though they were sharing coffee on an ordinary evening. "Family helps one another through everything, Amy," he said softly. The words sounded comforting. That was what made them dangerous. Victor reminded Amelia of things she had spent years trying not to count. The tuition he paid when her family couldn't afford college. The rent he quietly covered after her father died. The countless sacrifices he never asked to be repaid. None of it sounded like a debt when he described it. It sounded like love. The kind of love that never kept score. But gratitude can be heavier than chains when placed in the wrong hands. As Victor spoke, Amelia began to feel the walls of obligation slowly closing around her. For the first time, helping Arthur and helping her family felt like opposite directions on the same road. Only then did Victor reveal the truth. His organization had been trying to get close to Arthur Bricks for years. Every lead had failed. Every attempt had ended with another locked door. Arthur was too careful, too protected, and too experienced to trust strangers. But Amelia wasn't a stranger anymore. She had become the one person Arthur willingly lowered his guard around. Victor never demanded her help. He simply described the opportunity sitting in front of them and allowed the silence to do the rest. The first requests arrived disguised as choices. Out of love for her uncle, Amelia agreed. At least, that was the reason she repeated to herself every night. The following 3 months became a slow act of betrayal disguised as romance. She learned Arthur's routines, his favorite restaurants, and the names of the guards who protected him. The closer she grew to him, the harder the task became. Arthur trusted her completely. He shared stories he had never told anyone and dreams he had long ago stopped believing could come true. The second movie, Amelia stopped gathering information and started collecting guilt. Every secret Arthur shared felt like another stone sinking into her heart. To complete the favor, Amelia suggested a private vacation to a secluded tropical island. Arthur agreed immediately, delighted by the chance to escape the world with the woman he had fallen in love with. A week later, a small plane carried them across endless blue water toward a place called Banana Island. The journey felt almost dreamlike, as though reality itself had decided to leave them alone for a while. Arthur stepped onto the sand smiling, completely unaware that every mile of the trip had been carefully planned. Amelia watched him walk ahead before quietly reaching for her phone. With trembling fingers, she placed one final call. "We're here," she whispered to her uncle. "Do what you have to do." Behind her stood the man she loved. Ahead of him waited the trap she built,